and welcome to County Connections. I'm Pat Bingham, and today we're talking about National Telecommunicators Week. It's a time when we honor 911 dispatchers in our community for the critical work that they do that most of us never see. Telecommunicators are often called the tip of the spear, and I hope by the end of this conversation today that you'll understand exactly what that means. In the studio with me today are the Director of Pitkin County's 911 Dispatch Department, Brett Loeb, and long time dispatcher, Ginny Bultman. Welcome.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks for joining me. So let's start with you, Brett. What does the Emergency Dispatch Department do? It's probably a lot more than most people think.
I think so. A lot of what we do is, as we say, behind the scenes, and but really just the basics of the three main things that we do are take 911 calls. So if you call 911, we're the ones that'll answer that. We also answer all the non-emergency calls for all of our agencies across the valley. We dispatch for fire, law, and EMS throughout Pitkin County and even some parts of Eagle, Garfield, and Gunnison County. So if you call for information or if you call with an emergency, we're the ones that answer that. We then take that information, decide who to send to it, and then get on the radio and send out whatever resources we feel are appropriate. The last major thing that we do is issue emergency notifications. So in this valley, Pitkin Alerts, a lot of people are familiar with that. Those come from our department as well.
It is the ultimate multitasker job, I have to say.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
how your dispatchers have multiple screens and that they're responsible for of information. And as you say, all we know as the public is that I'm going to call 911. I'm in a crisis. I'm calling 911. Okay, so they're doing that, but they're also getting the police officer to get to you, or if it's a fire, they're dispatching the fire guy to get to you. So there's way more than what goes on that telephone call.
Absolutely. There's 8 screens to be exact that each dispatcher is responsible for. On that is a lot of different information that they know how to do and to manipulate and to work through. But what we really want to do is just make it seamless for the public. If you have to call 911, we want it to be as easy as possible. And really your only responsibility is we'd like you to know where you are and to answer our questions. If you can do that, we will get you help as quickly as we possibly can.
Now, what does it mean when we say tip of the spear?
You know, that's a phrase that's been coined mostly out of law enforcement. They like to use military terms. And really what it is we are also called sometimes the first responders. So we're part of the whole first responder and public safety system, but nothing can get started until we initiate it. So as you know, if you think of the spear as you know, the line of attack, we're right up front and we're getting that information, triaging it, getting the information out to the first responders so they can actually go and provide the help.
And sort of the scary part, and we're going to get to you, Jenny, because you've actually been doing this for more than 2 decades.
Yes.
Can I say that? We're going to get to you. But the success or not so success of a call, of an emergency, of a crisis, really rests heavily on the shoulders of the telecommunicator, I would think. I mean, obviously the police officer is going to respond and the ambulance driver, you know, is going to take care of the incident, but it first has to get to them in a way that they can properly respond.
Right, and a lot of that is the information that we gather from the callers, especially the address. That's obviously the most important thing, and that's going to be the first question you hear when you dial 911 is, where is your emergency? If we don't get that address right, then we are faced with a big dilemma because we can't get resources to you. The other things that we can provide are medical instructions for medical calls. If you're having a medical emergency, we can provide you instructions to help stop the bleeding, provide CPR, choking, the drownings, hangings, all of those horrible, awful things that really seconds count, we can provide some level of medical expertise before the medical teams get there. So yes, there is a huge responsibility on us, and we take that very seriously. And I'm proud to say that our team does that very well.
Now I'm going to get off script a little bit while we're on this topic of the heavy responsibility that it is for dispatchers. And having been in the driver's seat, being a dispatcher for as long as you have, Ginny, I just heard an NPR interview like yesterday about CPR, about dispatchers being trained in CPR. I learned in this interview that not all dispatchers are across the country. There's not not everyone's trained the same.
That's true.
But I happen to know here in Pitkin County you are.
That's true. There's no national standard right now, and there's not even a Colorado standard, although we're working towards that. But here in Pitkin County, in all the agencies that we dispatch for, we are trained, all of your dispatchers are trained on emergency medical dispatch. We call it EMD. And we have instructions that we give and questions that we ask. And we can do everything from helping someone control the bleeding to giving CPR instructions to very simply getting someone ready to meet the ambulance when it arrives on scene for something like an illness or an injury. And all of your dispatchers are trained that way, highly trained, and not just once. We have to recertify very often, and we have continuing education that keeps us up on the latest of the instructions that we should be giving to people. We do have, we've saved lives.
Yes. I mean, in this call that they used as an example, which was a terribly tragic example, was a dispatcher somewhere that was not trained in CPR, and all she knew how to do was a baby that wasn't breathing, and all she knew how to do was ask the mother if it was choking, and it wasn't choking, it wasn't breathing, it needed CPR, and the dispatcher didn't know what to do from there. And I felt badly because I thought, well, you know, it wasn't her fault that she hadn't been trained in that. But it makes me feel better knowing that the dispatchers in our area are trained in all these different things. You're about the next best thing to a first responder in the field.
Right. So the expectation from the public in general nowadays in the United States is that they're going to get these instructions. And we meet those expectations. And what happens is that you think, oh, here you are in this little small town. Here we are in Aspen, Colorado, small town USA, and you're getting the same level of service as you're going to get in any big city with hundreds of dispatchers at your disposal. We're getting the same level of training as those larger comm centers, and sometimes even better training.
Well, and now in your experience, do you have any memorable moments that you would share? I know you can't tell us details about personal things, but do you have any moments that you're most proud of in all your years? I know you're rather shy and humble, but I'm going to make you tell us.
Brett has some things he could share. Actually, he does have a story.
Yeah, there's a story that we actually use in training to help prepare dispatchers for what they might face. For 8 years, I was a supervisor in dispatch down in Grand Junction. There was a call one afternoon of a toddler that had fallen into a pool. The big sister, who was about 12, was actually the one that called us because the mother was too hysterical. They ended up getting the child out of the pool. The 12-year-old, who incidentally, kids make much better callers a lot of times than adults. The 12-year-old talked to her mother, you know, as we gave the 12-year-old instructions, she passed that on to her mother, who performed CPR on the 2-year-old. And I'm happy to say that the child survived and had no complications from that incident.
Wow.
But it's not common, but these kind of instructions around the country save lives every day.
Yes.
Now, these kind of calls are traumatic emotionally, I would think, for someone sitting at that on that telephone line. I've even called 911, and I was not exactly my calmest moment, my proudest moment when I needed help. How do you guys deal with that? How do you deal with the stress that comes over the telephone? First of all, you're talking to someone who's having the worst day of their life, right? Probably. How do you deal with that?
So we're talking to people, exactly as you said. Some people are having the worst day of their lives. We like to joke that people aren't calling us to tell us they're having a great day.
No.
We're hearing from people who are in very traumatic and dramatic situations where lives are literally at stake. We are trained to be professional, wear our dispatcher cap. We learn to prioritize. And there is, Brett doesn't like the word multitasking, but we have to do lots of things at the same time. And how do we deal with it? It differs in every dispatcher. We have programs that are at our disposal where we can seek help from counseling. A lot of people rely on our families and our friends. What works for one dispatcher doesn't work for another dispatcher as far as staying mentally healthy. You do have to take care of yourself. It's a challenging job, and the very seriousness of the job actually is quite helpful when you think of what a difference that you can make in someone's lives, even if it's not giving CPR, even if it's putting two people together. I lost my dog, and the next phone call is, I found a dog. You're making a difference in people's lives, and that can help you get on with your life. And not to say that people don't have emotional impact. It is an impacting job. This is not normal. Not everyone does this. We are addressing abnormal situations, people's emergencies, and we are expected to do it professionally and not freak out and not lose our heads. And so the seriousness of the job can be impacting on people as well.
Well, I would think it would be, I've heard, not first responders like you, but just regular old first responders, talk about how when they're in the moment, and my only experience with this would be when I was on ski patrol. And when you're in the moment, you come to something, it's kind of bad, you know, maybe it's a compound femur or something. It's really a scary thing.
Right.
You sort of are in this control mode. You don't have an emotional response. You deal with it, you take care of it, and then it's later when you start thinking about it and you think, whoa, that was really bad. You know,
So sometimes you don't have the opportunity to process it right away, and the very next call you do get after a very serious call is something that is less serious, like I want to complain my neighbor's dog is barking. You have to answer their call just as professionally as you did with the one that you considered a true emergency.
So you might feel like you want to say, are you kidding me?
Exactly.
Do you have any idea what's going on here? I don't care about your dog.
Right. You hang up and you say that to
you
your
can't do
partner in
that.
the call center.
I mean, that would be really,
It's
really,
true.
really hard.
Yeah, there's a couple things that make it different from being on scene or being in the field. One is that when you're in the field, you have what's right in front of you, and that's all that you're dealing with, and you solve that problem, and you're good. A lot of times we have that right in front of us, but another 911 call comes in, or it's so big that we have to actually start dispatching on the radio while we're taking the call. The other thing is we're not there, so we don't always see the end result of that call. And that they've proven has as much of a traumatic effect on the brain as being there and seeing a traumatic event, because your mind fills in the worst case scenario every time, and you're left with a lot of what ifs. Now, our agencies are very, very good about kind of closing that loop with us, but it doesn't always happen. And during the time that you're taking the call, again, your mind creates things that may not be there. And
Yeah, because you
makes it
don't,
tough.
you rarely hear the outcome, right? You don't know, well,
There's
what
no
happened to
closure.
that baby? What happened to the toddler? What happened to the you know, whatever it is? And in our small community, the call that you get could be someone you know.
Yes, and
or a
oftentimes
family
is.
member.
Yes, we've had that experience a lot, and recently, you know, My partner's taking calls, and it's from her family member who's involved in incidents, and you can't get up and leave. You can't just run out the door and go make sure everyone else is all right. You have to sit tight and keep doing your work. There's a lot of instances where you know of the person, or you know you're a friend of a friend, that kind of thing. In a small community like that, that's where the impact can hit hard. And our friends down, as a segue to the Lake Christine fire,
I was going to
our
get
friends
to
down
that.
in Basalt, you know, we're taking all of these calls, and we know these people, and we know where they live, and we know that their houses and livelihoods are threatened. So that can make a great impact as well. Also, we live in this community as well. So when things are happening near where our homes are, it can make a great impact.
Now let's talk about the Lake Christine fire. We set some records last summer. That was the biggest thing that has ever happened, I think, in our valley. And it wasn't in Pitkin County, but you are the dispatch center for those calls on this side of the mountains. We set some records, so let's start with that. What was it like when those calls started coming in, and what records were set?
Sure. Well, first of all, just to explain what happens in the 911 system as it exists today. If you call 911, if you're on a landline, obviously it goes right to whatever center has been designated as your point of contact for that. But only about 15 to 20% of our calls are from landlines now. The rest are from cell phones, which is a huge shift in our world and our industry. So what happens is the cell call hits the tower triangulates as best it can your location, and based on that location, it sends that 911 call to whatever center has been designated as your point of contact. So even though a lot of those calls came from Eagle County and Basalt, we are the call center that receives all the 911 calls until you hit the Garfield County line and even a little bit beyond that. So we got all those calls right away, which led to, it's really a once-in-a-career kind of event.
You hope.
How many people,
we certainly hope.
How many people, when you're fully staffed, which you're rarely fully staffed, and we can talk about that a little bit too later, but how many people are taking all these calls at any one time?
Well, in general, we have one call taker and one dispatcher. So one person on the phones and one person on the radio. That was the scenario on the afternoon of the 3rd, July 3rd last summer when the Lake Christine fire started. Of course, it started in a place that was very visible from not only the town but also Highway 82. We got a lot of calls, and there was only 2 people in there that were charged with taking those calls, as well as dispatching all the fire departments, the law enforcement officers, and sending out all our emergency notifications. So just for an idea, normally on an average summer day, we take about 40 911 calls and about almost 200 non-emergency calls. In that first 30 minutes after the fire started, we took almost 90 911 calls and another 25 non-emergent calls. So really over half a day's calls, and really as far as 911 goes, triple the amount of our daily average in 30 minutes. And it was with one person taking those calls. They did a spectacular job.
Was it you, Ginny?
It was not me.
lucky day.
I was contacted by the radio dispatcher. She texted me. We just looked at our texts today, and it said, "Help, Lake Christine is on fire." Oh. And I had worked a day shift, and I had been home about an hour and a half, and I got in my car and came right there. And when I got there, those 2 were still the only 2 there, and it only takes 12 minutes to get from my house to the comm center. And then very quickly on my heels were all kinds of other people, including one gal who left her date to come, dressed all in her finery, to come and help out. In a matter of 30 minutes after the initial call, we had a whole bunch of help, and we had to be careful not to burn out all of our resources right then, because we realized quickly this wasn't going to be a quick ending to this call.
And that's another thing I have to say about your dispatch center. Not I have to say, you should say, it's not easy to get people to train to do this job, to take a job like this. It's demanding. It requires a lot of training. It's shift work. It's graveyard shifts. It's just, and so you rarely have a full staff, right? Because of the turnover in the department.
Yes, yeah, here and nationwide, it's a problem keeping centers staffed, and we're on probably our 5th or 6th year of not being at full staff, although we're very close now.
And so the staff that you do have, and you've got a handful of long-timers that are amazing people that they've made this their life's career, and then you have some newly trained people that have come in. But the dedication, someone out on a date, someone at home who'd just gotten home from work and saw the call and said, oh boy, all hands on deck. They all come in and they all help each other out.
Absolutely.
I love that.
That's part of being the first responder. You just never know when a call like this is going to happen, and you have to be ready. If you're in town, you're going to come help, and they did it without question. It was great. And then it actually turned out, just to touch back on the next day after the fire, we ended up taking almost 800 calls on the 4th of July. That's when, if you remember, all the evacuations were happening. We sent out the emergency notification about possibly losing power up in Aspen and Snowmass. So there was a lot of calls, a lot of questions about what was going on. Those all came to us also.
Wow. You have to remember that that wasn't the only thing going on. When there's one big thing going on, there's still the other things happening. People are having other types of emergencies. So in addition to everyone focusing on that one thing, we're taking the regular everyday problems that people have. And you would think that, we live in a place that's beautiful and nothing bad happens to people. We have the same problems, the same injuries and crime that you find elsewhere. And so they still have those problems while the fire is going on.
Right.
So we're not just answering calls about the fire. We're answering the everyday calls.
Now, we have 5 minutes left, but I want to touch on, we could talk about Lake Christine. I'm sure there's all kinds of good, juicy stuff to talk about there. But I want to talk about technology a little bit, because I know some really exciting things are happening as far as technology goes that will update this dispatch center like nobody's business. And you don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but Brett, tell me, what kinds of things are you looking at that are going to make this even better than it already is?
Well, the most exciting thing for our industry happened last summer, and we grabbed hold of that technology as soon as we could get it, and that is the location information that we can receive from cell phones. Most people think that, yes, we've always been able to tell exactly where you are as soon as you call 911. That's absolutely not the case. A lot of times it's relied on triangulation of cell towers and sectors, and you get like a mile radius of accuracy. So
that's not close enough.
That's all of Aspen, really.
Yeah.
So just this summer, Apple and Google finally got on board with allowing us to access their location technology. And they opened it up to the 911 center. So now when you call 911, if you have the latest versions, which is important because if you don't, you need to upgrade your version.
Okay.
We have about a 10-minute window to gather that information from the cell phone. Just like when you call Domino's or Uber, they know exactly where you are. The reason they did is because when you sign up for those apps, you say, okay, yes, I agree to allow this information to be released.
I see.
And now they've said that when you call 911, you are agreeing to give us that information. We don't use it for anything else, only to find you when you call 911.
So I've got to speed it up,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So you can find people much better than you used to, but still not perfect. You still are going to ask them where they are to get.
Absolutely. We want you to know, but it's a challenge here because we have so many visitors,
Tourists.
and a lot of them,
They don't know where they are.
a lot of them don't know. So this is a very big asset for us to now have that capability. Although we don't rely on it 100%, we're still getting used to it. Some other things to move quickly.
Yes.
You know, that we've been talking about. We've been able to text here in Aspen. We were the
Text
first
to
in the
911.
state. Text to 911.
Almost 5
You can
years.
always do that. It's also a great option if you can't get a signal. Try texting because
So you just
sometimes
you text
the text
the
goes
911 into the
Yes.
text.
through. Exactly.
As the phone number.
That's
Yeah.
the phone number, and you can start saying and that would work in a scenario where you didn't want anyone to hear you. You might be in
Yes.
an unsafe situation, and you need to tell somebody what's going on, but you don't want them to hear you.
Absolutely.
Wow,
The
text to
the
911.
next couple of years might bring video, pictures, being able to send that to us. We're working on a system that will allow some conversations through satellite
'Cause,
phones.
here's the guy. He just took my purse. Here's a picture of him, right? Or this is the fire. There's a fire at Lake Christine. Here, it's just right here, and you can see exactly where it is, right?
Yeah, or
oh boy,
I'm
this is
hurt
exciting.
on the slopes, and here's what it looks like all around me. Hopefully that'll help you find me.
And there's
a
there's
lot of
so
exciting
much
stuff.
more. That's exciting. And then just very quickly, iPause. What is iPause? It's that thing that happened in Hawaii that we thought missiles were coming in, but we're not using it that way, right?
That's right, and we actually did use it on the 4th of July to tell people about the power outage possibility. What it is instead of with Pitkin Alert where you sign up and it goes directly to your cell phone or to your home phone, it broadcasts out from the cell tower. So it's a way for us to hit every device in a certain area.
And you would only use this in big, big deals.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
really big deals.
Right.
And we really haven't had, because even Lake Christine didn't involve everybody, right? So you really didn't need to tell everybody from one end of the universe to the other. It was the people that were being evacuated you needed to talk to and target. So the iPause technology, which you have, would be available for much bigger things.
We have it if we need it, and we hope we never need it.
I hope you never need it. And on that positive note, we hope we never need it. We hope we don't have a big wildfire this summer, and that you guys can have, just kind of cruise through the summer. Who knows? But thank you so much
Thanks, Pat.
for coming in
Thank
and
you for
telling us
inviting
about
us.
this. And Ginny, I mean, I'm amazed. I bow to you. I bow to you. You are something else for sticking
Thank
to this
you.
job for
Thank
as
you
long
for
as
saying
you
so.
have. And Brett, thanks for bringing our 911 dispatch center even further into the future than it ever was. And if you run into a telecommunicator, a 911 dispatcher on the street that you know, give them a thumbs up, give them a pat on the back. If you're a girl, you can hug them, but I don't know. If you're a guy, I don't know if you can do that. But anyway, give them a thumbs up and tell them, well done, because it's not easy. So thank you very much for joining us today, and this has been County Connections, and we'll see you next time when we come up with something else to talk about. Thanks again.